Good afternoon, everyone, and apologies. Thank you for your patience. We've had a little bit of a technical glitch with YouTube today, but we are in business now, and we will get this meeting underway. And I'm going to ask Councillor Uhrig to read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants past, present, and future who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Councillor. And now if you just join me in a moment of silent reflection on our business today. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, just bring it forward if it does occur to you. And we'll move on to announcements. Any announcements today? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, everyone. Just a couple of things today. I wanted to thank all the good folks who are listening, who participated in the Meaford Rotary and United Way Coldest Night of the Year event this past weekend. We're hoping to raise $25,000. You can still provide donations up until the end of March, and we're getting quite close to that goal already. And these funds assist people living in poverty and facing homelessness right here locally. And they also assist Rotary House with its ongoing operations, our programs, and allows us to do work on the facility. So very worthy cause. And in case anyone listening wasn't aware, this afternoon between 3 and 7, our Conservative candidate Paul Vickers will be at the Hills Bar and Grill, and that's in the clubhouse right at the Meaford Golf and Country Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Keaveney. Any other announcements on our side of the horseshoe? On the other side, anything? Really quiet. Okay. We're moving into the public participation segment, and while we don't have anyone to speak today, I am going to just remind you that members of the public are always encouraged to provide counsel with their comments and questions. Presentations do have to be prearranged with legislative services, and that's done before the agenda is released. And are limited to 10 minutes. If a member of the public wishes to make a deputation on items on the council agenda or to ask a public question of council, they may do so either in person at the chambers here or remotely via Zoom. Members of the public wishing to make a deputation or ask a public question must register in advance with Legislative Services by 10 in the morning on the day of the meeting. Deputations are limited to 5 minutes, public questions to 2 minutes. And the public can watch this meeting live via the Municipality of Meaford's YouTube channel at www.meaford.ca/YouTube. But first, we have to have the connection. So there are no presentations today, no deputations nor public questions. Council inquiries. Any council inquiries today? Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So everyone knows we've had pretty heavy snowfall in the last month or so. And to that end, you know, our crews are doing a pretty nice job pushing the snow back. But to that end, I've noticed that a lot of our fire hydrants have been literally buried and covered in snow. I'm just wondering what our process is. What do we have in place to, I think that those fire hydrants probably should be opened up. So maybe this question goes to the interim acting CAO. We have some information on that. That would be greatly appreciated.
Through you, Mayor Kentner. Yes, we realized the hydrants were getting quite high and buried. So we are going to have crews go out probably later this week to start cleaning them all out.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And a question as well for our interim CAO, Ms. Manning. We have a couple of letters in our correspondence, but I thought I'd bring this up now, Val. And I wondered if you could share with us in relation to our purchasing policy, just a very high level overview of where we are with that and what might be required if council was interested in requesting any changes to that policy in light, of course, of what's happening south of us with President Trump and proposed tariffs and so on.
So currently, I know it's, we've reviewed our purchasing policy recently, but I think the last time it was updated was in 2022. So we could bring that back at any time because it wouldn't hurt for us to have an updated purchasing policy with the tariff piece in it.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up then, Val, so do you require a notice of motion to do that, or is that something staff was going to undertake anyway?
Through you, Mayor Kentner, we can probably just do it anyway. We'll just put it on our list.
Okay, any other questions around the horseshoe? Seeing none, we'll move into items for consideration. And the first recommendation is be it resolved that bylaw 2025-07 being a bylaw to appoint council members to committees and boards be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Can I have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Deputy Mayor Keaveney and seconded by Councillor Greenfield. Any discussion? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're just going to provide a short explanation. My name has been added here for the Northeast Gray Health Clinics Board. I did sit on that board for 8 years prior. And because there was a commitment from council for $25,000 a year to that board, and then that commitment ran out. So then I ceased attending those meetings, but now we've reinstated that commitment of $25,000 to the board. So I've been invited to return to the board. So just want to make sure everybody was kind of following how that happened. And if anybody has any question about that, for sure ask. And the other, I did have a second question in relation to you, Councillor Bartley. It lists you as being a member of the Bogner Hall Board. Are you wishing to continue in that post?
Yes,
Through the mayor. At this time, I had stepped down from that board, and at this time, I'm going to remain stepped down from that board. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And a little bit of background on my fellow councillor, Mr. Uhrig, being named to the police board. The reason why that I asked around and found a willing fellow councillor to take over that seat. I found that the process, and I do wish my fellow councillor Uhrig all the very, very best on this. I found that the process that the province had laid out for my particular aspect, I found that the timelines had changed dramatically, in my opinion, and that the time element in order to fulfill some of the things that the province is now demanding that be fulfilled, from my aspect, I quite literally, I was unable to actually meet them. The key element was that when I first went through it, you had to take, a course on, take a test on roles and responsibilities. Well, that's pretty straight up. Every board that you serve on, you need to know what you're all about. And then, as another example, partway through that, they came out to me and they said, "Oh yeah, by the way, you got to have a police criminal check done on you." And I thought, well, that would have been interesting, to have been told to everybody that put their names forward, because it could be pretty embarrassing that you find out you got to have that done. I got that done, by the way. I was good to go on that. And then they said, well, you got 6 months now to get about 5 other courses under your belt. And that's where it was in my mind. And, I was sent information that I was to be sworn in. I thought, oh, good, we're getting at this. And anyway, I replied back that I was okay to get sworn in. And then they replied back and said, no, you can't be sworn in. And I asked why. And they said, you haven't completed all of the courses that are required for you to complete these courses. We can't swear you in. At which point I said, well, I guess then I won't be going over to do that. It would be a waste of my time. And the time element, and Mr. Uhrig will have to get at this probably as soon as he can. The time element was for March the 1st. And from my time, I have an inability to do that. And I do wish you, Rob, all of the very best, sitting down and going through all of these things. And I do know that you will get through them all. Easier probably, and better and smoother than myself. So I really appreciate you doing that for me and for this municipality to be the representative on that board. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. I haven't got my police check yet back, but I'm pretty sure.
Okay, are we ready to call the vote? All in, oh, sorry. Um,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if Councillor Bartley is stepping down, we need an alternative to be appointed for the Bogner Hall Community Board.
Okay. And is that something that we can do here and now?
I would suggest so, yes.
So do we have any voluntold? Anybody, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have attended not every meeting, but when I can and am available, I have been attending the hall boards, so I can continue to do so if desired, or if anybody else would like. They're a wonderful
I'm-
group out there.
I'm sure there are 6 people here willing to second the motion. Anyway, do we need anything more formal than that and a vote?
Seconder and then a vote on that piece.
Okay, a seconder for, and it's Councillor Urick.
So we'll do an all in favor to replace Councillor Bartley and appoint Deputy Mayor Keaveney as an alternate for the Bogner Hall Community Board. We'll need a vote on that and then a vote on passing the bylaw, please.
Okay, so the first question, all in favor? And that is carried, thank you. And then we have the bylaw to move. Okay, all in favor? And again, that's unanimous, thank you. The next item, the recommendation is be it resolved that bylaw 2025-08 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 60-2009 pertaining to lands known municipally as 057606 12th line be taken and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and seconder for that. Moved by Deputy Mayor Keaveney and seconded by Councillor Forder. Any discussion on this? We were all at the planning meeting for this particular event. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And the third item here, the recommendation is that Council of the Municipality of Meaford direct staff to provide feedback as contained in Report Finance 2025-04 Grey County Planning Model Update to Grey County. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Bartley and seconded by Deputy Mayor Keaveney. Discussion on this. I think everybody knows what it's about. Did you have a word on it?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, yes, no, this is a very well-written report and outlines a lot of the concerns for sure. Just wanted to state that I'm in favor of moving forward to continue to explore the potential of sharing planning services with the county. The one question I had in relation to this, originally there was discussion about hubs being placed around the county. And my understanding was that Meaford would have a joint hub with TBM, and we know TBM is not going to participate in this discussion moving forward. So I'm just curious where that leaves Meaford. Has there been any conversation about, would Meaford be its own hub then, or would it go with Grey Highlands, or do we know what that might look like?
I can answer that through you, Mr. Mayor. We actually don't 100% know what it might look like, and it may depend. I mean, that was the original proposal to show how it could work, have 4 planning hubs. It would be within the 4 corners sort of thing, and cover all the municipalities so folks don't have to travel a long ways to get to answer their planning questions. And also make it easy for those planners to get to the local municipalities as well, because they're not traveling super far normally, notwithstanding that sort of planning floater that might cover off things like illness or staffing issues, et cetera. But until they know for sure how many folks are participating, how many of the 9 municipalities are participating, they won't really know how the hubs might work. For example, if Owen Sound didn't participate, but Georgian Bluffs did, perhaps it becomes a joint one. Meaford and Georgian Bluffs end up using the same hub. Those are the sorts of questions that I don't think we'll know for sure until it's determined who's participating moving forward. But I think the thought was to make sure it was covered so that, there was one in close enough proximity to be reasonable, if that makes sense.
Councillor Greenfield and then Councillor Urick.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, when I first heard about this a few months ago, I thought, oh yeah, there maybe some advantages to this. I guess my first thought was, well, maybe it could mean countywide, a reduction in planners, a streamlining, but, more I think about it and the more I read reports such as this, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm a little worried. Like in Grey County, we have 4 municipalities that are on Georgian Bay. Town of Blue, our municipality, Georgian Bluffs, and Owen Sound. We get down into the more southwest part of the county and Georgian Bay is no factor. I really think, even though we are all Grey County, maybe there are differences. There are different developments, different ideas, and so right now I'm leaning against going into a countywide situation. I am in favor of more discussion, more research. I guess a couple of times I have had thoughts that if we go to a countywide planning system, is this perhaps the first step in a countywide amalgamation? And I'm not really anxious to even entertain those thoughts. Thank you.
I think I heard a warning sounded there. Councillor Urick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree with Deputy Mayor. I think it's a well-written report and certainly asks a lot of the pertinent questions. I guess, Sarah, I have one question that relates to this to you. The one question that says impact to local municipal corporation, it does talk about staff recruitment, retention, resilient approach policies, detailed information, cost limitations, cost budget. You had intimated something when this first came around, talking about if there's a actual movement of staff, there could be many more HR factors come into this in terms of contract discrepancy, in terms of literally buyouts, people, a number of different things that come in play. I'm not sure I saw the HR component of encapsulated in that. Is that part of the questioning process, I presume?
Through you, Mayor Kettner. Yes, the HR piece is something that is currently in progress. And I know municipalities are working with the county on that piece. There was a timeline to get some information into the county. And I'm just not sure where that sits right now, but I will be doing follow-up to that piece, of course, because there is, like you alluded to, there is a much bigger implication. Thank you.
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Apologize if I missed this in the report, but I didn't see, maybe this might be just too early. But if at what point will there be any sort of public consultation involved so we could hear from residents and builders and developers on this matter? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that's a great question. I think one of the reasons we brought this report now is because this was our first report that was public that everyone could look at. We wanted to make sure that the public had a chance to at least have this on their radar. As you know, some of the other municipalities, this had become on the radar of the media, et cetera, to at least review sort of the reports that had gone on the public side. I know I read a report from the town about the town Blue Mountains, the way they were going, and certainly Owen Sound. And so this is sort of step one to at least put this on the table, that these are the kinds of things that we've provided as comments to date. But we don't actually have a plan for how the public consultation would play out. I would understand the next step will be that meeting among all of the municipalities, again, that are participating in March with county council. And that would be a great question to be asking county planning at that stage, what they think would be the best way to roll out public consultation. I don't think at this stage it's on the municipality to perform that, just because we don't want to like prejudice this, at least I don't want to prejudice the fact-finding stage with public consultation at this stage. I would like to hear more about how services would be provided to make sure that we know what that is first. But I do suspect that once we know a little more about what type, the hub that Councillor Keaveney suggested, is that still on the table? Those sorts of things will be really important to the public to know where they're going to go because it could be that they still go to this municipal office and a planner comes and sits in that office for a period of time, so many days a week. That's what they do in most of the municipalities that have the upper tier that does the planning. They don't all have to go to the county office. They can kind of do both. For example, in Bruce County, usually there's a planner at some of the lower tiers certain days of the week, especially if there's a zoning amendment or a file or something like that. They might have office hours for that municipality, like Northern Brisbane Peninsula or something, because otherwise it could be a large amount of travel. So I think those are for the public to go to get answers and things like that. And I know as we all know, there are people who do better with that face-to-face interaction versus just an email. And sometimes you get through a little bit more, issues when you can kind of talk to the person, show them maps, and you look at the same thing together versus just emailing some things back and forth. So some proposals work better in that face-to-face. So it will be important to know what are the opportunities of providing that part of the service. And I think once we have that, if they know that it's 6 municipalities or half of them, or maybe there's something totally different, then it'll be easier for the staff within the planning, those discussions with the county, to understand how many hubs we're talking about, or are we even talking about the hubs anymore? Are we into a different scenario? Because I think that's a really important key thing to provide as part of the public consultation. What does it look like? Where would the average Joe go, average Jane go to get their planning information, or will it all just be virtual? I think that's the part that we don't know yet. I don't think I think it's all solvable. It'll totally depend on whether it's 4 municipalities or 9 or 6 in the end.
I'd just like to thank staff, for the report. You did a really, really good job of pinpointing the pros and the cons, and paralleled my thoughts a lot in terms of, there's an opportunity here, but there's also a substantial risk. And I think it's important to weigh both. And so the report is valuable. It's really good to know what our own staff thinks about this proposal at this point. And you raised some really good questions. So, anything else on this before we vote to accept it? All in favor? Thank you. So now we need a motion to move into committee of the whole. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Bell and Councillor Uhrig, all in favor? And we are in committee of the whole. The first item here is that committee of the whole receive report development 2025-05 planning services 2024 annual update for information purposes. Moved by Councillor Greenfield and seconded by Councillor Forder. And discussion on this report. Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. One note in this report states that as per Bill 185, pre-consultations are now voluntary. So I would just kind of like to know how we as a municipality plan on approaching this going forward. Do we still plan on doing pre-consultations across the board, or maybe some clarification would be helpful? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you to the question, we still perform the pre-consultations, and as it says, they are voluntary. However, the act still says that we have to allow for pre-consultation, so that part didn't change. It used to say that we have to allow developers or folks to pre-consult with us on certain files. Whether we charge or not is a separate issue. We had to allow for it. And it used to say that we could pass a bylaw requiring it, and that part was repealed. So what we've been doing is if a developer is interested in having a pre-consultation, there's no difference. The process is exactly the same. And it does have it's not an insubstantial cost, but we do circulate the file to our engineer as well. So that does cost money. So we want to make sure that that's covered. So for example, if we had a subdivision probably subdivision's not the best example, but a big site plan for something of 100 units or something like that for multi-residential, we would circulate that to our engineer and talk about it internally through a development review team before we met with the developer to tell them sort of our early comments, and we would have those engineering comments that kind of like what kinds of things might they have to provide in their application? Do we have services for the property? What pipe sizes are we looking at in the front? Those kinds of things would all be given to them, just like before. So there is quite a bit of upfront effort for those to try to get them in a good spot to apply with as much information as they can provide that is useful to the file, try to get that deemed complete as quickly as possible as well. So it's a complete submission. So otherwise it's business as usual for us. We have seen a few people still move forward with a pre-consultation since the Bill 185 changes. I think we've had 3 or 4. Because some people feel it's an investment to make sure they usually at least I'll call it knocking off one engineering submission because they've got all that information up front instead of just trying to guess a little bit and submit with their best guess, if that makes sense. And then we hold at least one meeting with them in that process. So, and we may have our engineer at the meeting in some cases.
Other questions, Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you, Mayor Kettner, through you to Ms. McCarl. Denise, the number of severances are down slightly year to year. I'm assuming most of those severances are rural as opposed to urban. Would that be correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Because we have had a lot of severances in the rural area, in the rural zoning over the years, are we in any danger of running out of rural properties that cannot be severed? Like we can sever into 3 usually. Are we running short of that type of property to be severed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So some of the severances aren't actually for new lots. So that part might be confusing because we haven't, I think, looking at some of the other municipalities and how they're providing this information to council, one of the things I think might be useful is to tell you how many new potential units these files would create so that you can see the scale has changed on these, not just the file number, but this doesn't really represent the scale of how big these files are, if they're getting bigger or they're the same. But we find there's a number of lot additions that we reprocess every year. And last year, I think we did at least 2 for the Bruce Trail. So they were files where the Bruce Trail has acquired lands through whatever means, and they are severing off a house on a property, but keeping some of the lands that would become part of their trail network. So not all the severances actually create new development potential. But the question is still a good one because we have seen that, a lot of the questions that we get, there isn't an answer of yes, you can sever there just because of the previous severances in a lot of the rural properties. There are still a number of larger lots that would allow for more units to be created, or more lots to be created. And then in the county's last update, in our update in 2022, we added one additional lot that could be created in the rural designation. So they went up by one. So instead of 3, it was 4. That makes sense. So we have seen people take advantage of that. But over time, it will become harder and harder because of the previous lots that have been created. I think it's probably pretty split between new lots and lot additions right now. A lot of rejigging of property to, between farmers, or there was a couple of ones last year where a farmer went to sell his property and found out that, their well and septic is actually on the adjacent property that they'd previously severed, and they had to rejig that. So we see a lot of that still, if that makes sense.
Deputy Mayor, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the good news in this report comes on page 4 to read that our department is fully staffed. That's excellent. Congratulations. And I just wanted to come back to the number of total applications. In 2023, we saw 87, but down to 74 in 2024. But we know that doesn't mean that they were any less work. They're larger, more complex files is what I'm gathering from what you're saying, Denise. So I just wondered if you could speak a little bit to the trend in 2025. We're only 2 months in, but are you anticipating a continuation of a number of files coming your way? And I know there's going to be some big ones that we hope we can see added to this list in some form of completion of process during 25.
To you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, I've actually went back to 2013. So when I started here 3 years ago, I went back through the numbers to see what they look like over time. And we've seen a very steady growth of file numbers, but obviously year over year, they may go up and down slightly, and that may not really reflect the amount of work, to the point. If there's a bunch of large subdivisions and we just call it one subdivision, and then one year we don't have any, that doesn't mean that it was a significantly less work, because we're still processing that file. Some of them are multi-year projects. So we're seeing an overall still an upward trend, even though we hear a lot about housing and the costs, and, we don't see a lot, as much movement real estate wise as we had. We're not seeing it stagnate in planning yet. Unlike other places around in our area, some of them have seen a drop off. We're still seeing higher numbers. And from what we've done in the last 6 months, we see a lot of files have been wrapped up or are almost wrapped up that had been going for several years. And so we're feeling very positive about that they're just about ready to move into the next stage, which is the construction phase. And you can definitely see that when you're out and about and in the municipality as well. So we're seeing quite a few that are at that wrapped up stage. As you'll probably remember from 2024, we've got a couple of things that went from one step to the other, which will allow them to start building. And we've seen some of the phase 2s move forward, as Loon Call would be one of them, moving forward into another application to start working on phase 2. We've recently received a zoning amendment to change the zoning in phase 2 of Loon Call that you'll start seeing probably on the website shortly, and a public meeting notice shortly for that. So we expect to see quite a few things move from one stage to the other, kind of planning handed off to the building department in some cases. We're almost at the end of quite a few projects. I don't want to yell them out yet because I don't want to jinx them, but we're really excited about what the stage that a lot of them are at, because they're almost done. Some of them are done and they've signed agreements, and other ones are really, really close.
Another question, go ahead.
If I may follow up, Mr. Mayor. So what you're saying, Denise, then if these projects are done, the agreements are done or almost done, that means they've all got some allotment of capacity.
My favorite topic, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so some projects in 2024 were given allocation, and I would say it's something around 400 units were given allocation in 2024. So I don't want to spoil the surprise in the next little while when we'll have a report on where we are, because I know that council is patiently waiting for the year-end report from 2023. And just to let you know, we're working on the 2024 in real time versus waiting until December to do those. So we've been working on it as it's happening. But we are looking at about, I think it's about 400 units that were allocated in 2024, which is a huge amount. Like we're talking about things like One Legion Road, SkyDev, right? So those projects are in and of itself, that's over 300 units, 378 units.
That is
Right, just
music to
between
our
those
ears.
Pardon, Mr. Mayor?
That is music to our ears. Thank you. Any other questions before we pass this report? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Updates from members appointed to county council, committees and local boards. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Keaveney for a report on county council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This last report is in relation to our county council meeting on the 13th of February. And no surprise if we remember the weather that week, we did meet virtually. In the absence of Warden Matrosovs, past Warden Brian Milne took the chair. The usual minutes were adopted. 3 bylaws were passed. One, a bylaw to authorize the disposition of 1314 7th Avenue West in Owens Sound. The second, a bylaw to appoint MNP LLP, formerly BDO, as auditors for Grey County for a period of 5 years. And the third, the normal procedural bylaw confirming actions of the January 23rd meeting. The Committee of the Whole began with a discussion regarding a motion brought forward by Councillor McQueen, Paul McQueen, Mayor of Grey Highlands, and the request was to ask staff to prepare a report outlining options for snow removal at the Grey County-owned parking lot in Markdale, adjacent to the CP Rail Trail. Currently, neither Grey Highlands, the county, or the local snowmobile club have capacity to clear this lot. And staff had been contracting a private individual to do this, and the report will suggest continuing with this or any other potential solutions. It's a tricky one because the county is responsible for plowing the parking lot at Collapore. And this one, the county had been plowing it and then they weren't. And so we just have to figure that one out. The 412 Miller Street subdivision here in Meaford was on the consent agenda. Council approved the plan of subdivision, which will create 147 residential units, subject to determining the servicing, as we were just talking about with Denise. The next item of major interest was the closed meeting investigation report from Airden Bearless. Complaint had been submitted following our joint upper and lower tier closed meeting held August the 8th, 2024. It was determined that no wrongdoing occurred and that discussion in closed was appropriate under Section 239 of the Municipal Act. Forest management bylaw drew considerable engagement from members of council. The report requested direction to staff to move forward with public and municipal consultations. No one had issues with that request, but many councillors raised questions regarding different aspects of the bylaw, such as exemptions for developers who already have planning approval, which covers removal, replacement. And also we talked about the farmer's ability to remove trees for their own use, such as fence posts or hedgerows. This bylaw affects woodlands 1 hectare or larger. All municipalities have their own tree bylaws which pertain to individual tree cutting or clearing of small woodlots. Council approved a direction to staff to prepare an agreement with the Township of Southgate for the purposes of conveying 4 road crossings of the CP Rail Trail to the township from the county. And these crossings will support a new development in Dundalk, including a new school. The next report was also well discussed, and it was the result of an earlier motion requesting more information on the structure of our current council. Right now, we meet on the 2nd and 4th Thursdays, and there are 8 advisory committees, all providing recommendations to council. Those of us who are only familiar with that model, I think, feel that it's working really well, but some people would like to go back to the standing committees model, and that would allow then members of council to be assigned to each of 2 standing committees, and those committees really delve in much deeper detail into those particular topics of interest, whether it's finance or infrastructure or whichever. And then that information comes back to one county council meeting per month. So it was decided that this really should be the decision of the next council. And I'm sure that will arise, as it does, I think, in every new council's early mandate, to make a determination of what they want that structure to look like. CAO Wingrove and Director of Economic Development, Tourism and Culture, Savannah Myers, provided a presentation focused on the impacts of tariffs on the county as we know them at this point. Information was provided from FCM and AMO, and we just need to know that our county staff are working hard on preparing resources for our businesses. Similarly, as they did during COVID, they'll keep a lot of updates available on the website. And I think they will be, I'm sure, informing our lower tiers as well. So that's it, unless there's anything the mayor wishes to add.
No, thank you very much. Very comprehensive. Other boards, yeah, library board, Councillor Porter, right?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And through you, last Thursday, we did meet and it wasn't our normal meeting day, but because we had other council meetings spruced in there that we had to relocate the time. So in any case, it was a fairly short meeting, but we did discuss a few things. One in new business was discussion on book and material challenges in Canadian libraries, specifically things like book banning requests and things of that nature. So it looks like the Policy and Governance Committee is going to be reviewing the collection development policy, focusing on community requests for material reconsideration. The Policy and Governance Committee is also going to be reviewing a few other policies, specifically with regards to interlibrary loans, volunteers, safety, security, and emergency, and then also technology and equipment lending. And then, of course, our next meeting is going to be on March 19th. And if I missed anything, Councillor Greenfield, please feel free to step right in. Thank you.
Any other committees or boards meeting? Oh, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kentner. Seeing him on the agenda, I might as well talk about strengthening our community advisory committee. On February 5th, we met and we had some robust discussions. We did have the identical presentation from beautiful Joe Park Bridge given to us. We discussed that for a little while. Councillor Urick gave a little talk on economic development value. And I give a short talk on short-term accommodation and where we're sitting as a municipality on it. We had some good talks on that. One thing we did miss, though, from our November meeting, we went to bring something forward. So there's a recommendation from the committee from the November meeting that the Strengthening Our Community Advisory Committee recommend to Council of the Municipality of Meaford that Council write a letter to the Accessibility Advisory Committee expressing support for initiatives to provide local businesses with education on the requirements for compliance with the Accessibility of Ontario with Disabilities Act, AODA, and that Meaford Chamber of Commerce be invited to participate in these discussions to foster collaboration and awareness within the business community. And the thought behind that was there's not a lot of people in businesses know where it's at with the AODA, and they have changed, the goalposts have changed. So we're just wanting to maybe get some education out there to the local businesses. So that's where that recommendation comes from. Thank you.
Thank you. So I need a motion to move out of committee of the whole. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Greenfield, thank you. And we're doing that at 2:08, and I made a note, but didn't announce it, that we went into committee of the whole at 1:49. So I've got a move and second, and we should vote on moving out of committee of the whole and move on to notices of motion. And Councillor Urick, I believe you have a notice.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if there were any notices of motion first, presumably.
Sorry, no, that's right.
No, I have a motion, not a notice of motion.
Okay, sorry about that. Any notices of motion? Not seeing any. Let's go ahead, Councillor. Airy.
Okay, thank you. So recommendation, and once again, this came greatly through the advice of the Growing Our Economy Advisory Committee. So the recommendation reads that whereas Lisa Thompson, Ontario Minister of Rural Affairs, recently announced an increase in the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund over 2 years, and whereas an immediate increase be targeted to small northern and rural municipalities with a limited tax base, and whereas one of the goals of the program is to support business development and attraction through the business retention and expansion, which is also known as the BR&E tool. And whereas the municipality of Meaford has not undertaken the completion of a BR&E study since early 2000, therefore be resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford directs staff to submit an application to the 2025 Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund for the purposes of completing a BR&E study. And if the application for the grant is successful and the study can be completed, that the Growing Our Economy Advisory Committee participate in the study.
Is there a seconder for this, Councillor Forder? Any discussion? Questions, Councillor Bell?
Mr. Mayor, and to my fellow Councillor Urick, do you have any background or any way of answering what does that actually mean in order to roll this out? That is, who would qualify or who would not qualify? Do you have any background on it other than your opening remarks from Lisa Thompson, the Ontario Minister of Rural Affairs, so that it's under the heading of business retention and expansion? Money can be applied for. Any idea on how we can apply this?
And ironically, because we haven't even had one here since 2000, I did talk to Savannah Myers, who's the Economic Development Director for Grey County, and they're also undertaking something similar, and they're highly recommending this. The various tools that are in that box, I'm not going to be able to say with any great authority, but we should be looking at any utility that we can be utilizing. They are putting money out there. We are talking. So one thing I'll tell you about conversation I had with Savannah is that one of the things that we are not doing as a municipality that's very concerning, shovel-ready lands, trying to get ready for businesses, trying to encourage businesses to either expand or come here or do or growth. She told me that Meaford, not only do we not really have shovel-ready lands, she doesn't even know what lands we have that could potentially be shovel-ready lands. This is part of the bigger picture from my perspective, and I keep harkening back to economic development, that we really need to pull up our bootstraps, identify the properties that we have, and get out there and try and encourage businesses to come here. And then if we can utilize, exterior funding models that are going to kind of help with those, or help businesses that are interested in coming here. It's really interesting when we look at other businesses. I can look around the room and see business people who've always had various competitors in our past. You've got a fairly niche market. Your competitors are probably like that. Brandon, Steve, your past businesses, you probably had 10 or 20 local competitors that you really had to be concerned about. We've got 443 competitors in Ontario who are all trying to attract attention or attract business, retain business, get growth, get tourism, get all those things. We need to get all these tools that we possibly can as to why business should be coming here, because there's certainly all the other ones. And Savannah told me right now, what's really sad, we're not even really on Grey County's radar. You've got TCE potentially coming in with if it comes to fruition, with business adjunct businesses that will support them. You've got Bruce Power, which is doing an expansion. So there are going to be, again, ancillary businesses are going to be popping up. We're not on the radar because we're not ready. And we need things like this to make us ready to be able to go out and say to businesses, here's what we can offer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that. You're well versed on it. That's terrific. Why do you think the heading is business retention and expansion? Is it just a heading that they chose that really doesn't mean?
No, because I think
Retention?
because I think it's just as crucial. I think if a business is going to stay in a thriving community, I think that's just as important. Because if you have any kind of a business drain from your municipality, I mean, we only have to look at not that recent history, but Globe Mills, Amrock, you start to lose large businesses. That's at a macro level. Look at a micro level. If you start losing little businesses because they're having difficulties economically for whatever reason, and we're not able to support them, that's all lost. That's tax revenue. That's people because that's jobs lost. So I think business retention and expansion, they're absolutely hand in hand. They're essential.
And-
You can't afford to lose any business either if you're a small municipality.
The deputy mayor and I have had numerous meetings with people who are telling me that that they are hanging on by a thread. And these are businesses that we prize in Meaford. So back me up, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Mayor. Last week, there was a survey that came out from a downtown business that went to businesses locally that really spoke to the struggles that businesses are facing, and they're looking to us to help them with solutions because it's been a really rough winter. BRNE is a wonderful tool. It's not going to solve everything, but I think it's an opportunity to bring that information together, to bring forward those opportunities to collaborate, because it will be an in-depth discussion with as many of our businesses as humanly possible. If we're successful with this grant, there is $10 million per year, so it's a lot of money. And if we get lucky with this and we're able to hire somebody to really devote themselves to this project, it will be tons and tons of interaction with businesses, whether it's in small group charrettes and so on, or whether it's one-on-one, which is really the way most businesses communicate most effectively, is sitting down and talking directly to an interviewer. So I think that nitty-gritty parcel of information is really critical, because right now I'm feeling, and I think you're feeling the same, Mr. Mayor, like a lot of our small downtown businesses are looking to us to help them, to support them, to figure out this issue about, what's going on here and why aren't people going downtown and shopping? And we know it's lots of reasons. It's been the weather for sure. There's been a lot of sickness. It's post-Christmas and people are not in a financial position to do that. But whatever that culmination of issues is, our businesses many of them are struggling. And I think collectively we need to do everything we can. And part of it, of course, is, kind of what we did last year with the beautification of the downtown and creating an environment that attracts people to stop. But it's also taking the information that they are providing to us and figuring out what our role is to provide some solutions. So I think the sooner we can do this, the better. It'll take time. It won't be an overnight thing. This is a big project, but whatever information comes out of it will be a very strong guideline for an economic development strategy that can support business on that, as I say, ground level, that will lead to what Councillor Urick is talking about with that bigger picture of getting Meaford on specifically the Grey County map and making us attractive and the place not just that people want to live, but the place that people actually want to do business in.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that. Grey County is looking for 3 industrial hubs in the total county. And we don't have anything to put a sign on that this is available. We've got nothing to offer. And I've been talking this way ever since I got on council and in my term as mayor. And it's extremely frustrating. And that is why we need to hire somebody who has been there and done it, and who can, assemble the land that we need and get moving, and that put us into the game. And unless I'm mistaken, before too long, TC Energy will be getting going, and we will have all kinds of inquiries about what we have to offer. Problem is, we have nothing to offer. Councillor Urick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add in that, and Tony, I think what we have an advantage is because we have two people in particular on our Growing Economy Advisory Committee. One has provincial governmental experience background. The other has great consulting background. And again, they've both offered to help kind of participate and help in the study in any way they can. So not only are we utilizing our own time, whether or not we end up going consultant on this, again, a lot of things have to be determined on this, but the fact that we've got kind of a built-in kind of avenue of talent that's willing to help with it as well is also a real asset for us. So we should be utilizing it.
Councillor Greenfield is next.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I just want to emphasize what we're being asked for here is to give support to apply for a grant. So that's the first step. From there, I think the door becomes wide open. There's no doubt about it. As far as business retention, yes, we have to strive to keep what we have at this time. We have to try to expand on the number of businesses, and yeah, as far as municipally owned land, we don't have any. I think I think we still own a waterfront lot up in Queens Bush, at the far end of Queens Bush. I think, as far as I know, that's the only municipally owned land that we have. So pretty hard to put out a sales pitch when you've got nothing to sell. I do want to ask though, we did a business retention plan, I would say 20 years ago. And I just want to ask that when we talk about businesses, I think I'm hearing a lot about the urban area. Let's not forget, we've got a great number of businesses out in our rural area. Every farmer, as far as I'm concerned, is a business owner. So I really hope that it's not just the farm value added farms that could be included in this study, but we need to support all of our farming enterprises. So I mean, this is from Lisa Thompson, Minister of Rural Affairs. So I'm really hoping that our agricultural producers are somewhere worked in to this future plan. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. This is really, really good discussion, and I'm totally in support of this, which is why I seconded it. Part of a little bit of a bigger discussion perhaps is, how much is the funding request going to be? And if we do not receive the funding, is this something that the municipality would consider still moving forward with? So just a couple questions there, but Rob, do you have any idea what the funding request would actually be? Like how much does it be or any study cost?
Honestly, I do not at this point. Again, this is exploratory at this point. And to Deputy Mayor's point, there's $10 million out there. And on the surface, $10 million is a big amount of money. There are 444 municipalities. That's not a big amount of money. So it's not going to be, it's not like the province is throwing $1 billion at this and saying, yeah, okay, go get it. So this is going to be a smaller amount of funding. There's going to have to be obviously study into this to determine exactly what we can get and what realistically we should be asking for as a municipality of the size we are. So no, there's going to have to be some research done.
Right. I'm going to go over to our acting CAO.
Not through you, Mayor Kentner, not trying to interrupt. I just think I'd like Denise to give you some options here.
That'd be great.
So I've been furiously texting back to Val to tell her what the programs are. So under red, there's two streams. There's the Economic Development, Diversification, and Competitiveness stream. And that would fund up to $150,000 of a project. It's 50% up to $150,000. And the second stream is the Strategic Economic Infrastructure stream, which is 30% up to $250,000. And the difference between those two streams is one is more like it says infrastructure, it's more infrastructure based. So reason I'm bringing this up is that BR&E studies are just one of the options. There's lots of other ones. So there's the entrepreneurship or business succession, business at retention and expansion, downtown revitalization, technology adoption or innovation initiatives, attraction and retention of workers, immigrants, and youth, collaborative marketing and outreach, sector or value chain development. And I think some of that sector or value chain development are things that if we've done an economic development strategy that we think is well developed enough that it could be brushed off and cleaned up and then move forward with those sector developments, that could be in there. And then under the infrastructure one, there's rehabilitation of cultural heritage or tourism attractions, redevelopment of vacant and or underutilized buildings, and streetscaping and landscaping. So there's a lot in there, and my recommendation is to take what Councillor Urick has said, and could we ask that you allow it to be a little bit more broad and provide direction that you want us to bring something back to say, what is the programs that we think are the most benefit to Meaford? And I suggest that we just maybe schedule a meeting with Savannah and their team. I know they've met, the ECDEV folks have met with them already before, but there's probably, and certainly planning has spent quite a bit of time with Savannah's team as well when they've been doing site selection for different folks looking for industrial and commercial lands. But that we meet with them and just chat out what are some of the best options for Meaford based on the existing studies that we have. So just so you know, we can't use those grants to create a new economic development strategy or anything like that. It's understood that we already have some of those things, or we haven't got them and we're going to do them later. But my suggestion is that we keep it a little bit more broad, but we know that those funding streams are open and that we start working towards putting some grants together for RED. Does that make sense?
Councillor Urick?
Thank you, Denise. I couldn't agree more. No, there are definitely more tools out there that we can tap into. I am all for it. So I can make an amendment to my own motion. Sure. To expand that to include other potential terms of funding that would support growth, and to include Grey County's economic development department in that search.
Thanks. That's great, Mr. Mayor. I just know they've been so great to provide us some help in the past with things. We've leaned on them quite a bit because they've got lots of tools already that they're using. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel.
They're having some success too.
Thank you.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. Is there a time limit on this for applying for this money, Mr. York?
Denise is scurrying as we search. No, sorry. I honestly don't know. I didn't look into determine what the end date was for this. But we will look into that obviously and make sure. But
how long does it take to spend $10 million?
Yeah. But if we're going to actually expand that, then obviously there'd be more than hopefully one funding body available we could look at. But we do need to do this, to your point, we need to do this as soon as possible. Like I said, I already reached out to Savannah. She's offered to help in any way she can, that they can, their department can. To your point, Harley, it was really interesting because in the report she sent me, when we talk about Meaford not having a lot of municipal land, right now, their report showed that there were only 59 potential sites in all of Grey with 1 or more acres of land available. So your point is apt that there's not a lot of kind of places out there. Her take as well is that rural is just as important as urban. There is no divide there. There's a strong desire to make sure that that's equal. So it's just a matter of seeing what we can do to move forward.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just another suggestion, in conversations with Savannah, whether that's Denise or Val or whomever is working with her, Meaford still has not seen the business gap analysis project that was to happen through Think Compass and Luigi Preston. Many of the other lower tiers have already had that completed, so just where that might fit into our thinking about which funding stream to apply for through the RED grants, it just would be a discussion, I think, to bring up with Savannah.
So are we going to amend the motion? Do we have an amendment? Thank you.
Okay, so I have the main motion at the top, and this is what I heard for an amendment to, whoa, sorry. This is what I heard for an amendment to the direction portion of the motion. And we have a mover so far, we need a seconder.
I think it'd be great if somebody would read that. It's too small for me.
Here, do you want me to zoom a bit?
I just, if we could hear them. Yes.
Yeah, so
that-
that the
that-
motion be
that's-
amended to replace the last paragraph with the following.
So the amendment reads, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford direct staff to review the 2025 Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund and other funding resources, and also collaborate with the Grey County Economic Development Department and bring a staff report back to council at a later date with options for initiatives to review.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my only concern is I don't want, if council's waiting for a report for that to get in the way of getting an application in, whatever the timelines may be. I just don't want there to be any holdups in the process if, a report has to come to us and we have to consider it and have it come back and consent and whatnot. That could take a month. So I just don't want that to interfere with the timeline.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, and I agree with you, Deputy Mayor. I agree with your motion. I agree with what Denise brought forward. But there's no time limit, but I'm going to guess it's first come, first serve. I'd hate to have to try to set up meetings with Grey County. This could take 6 months. This has to happen ASAP in my mind.
So probably, perhaps we don't need the amendment. In other words, we can be back with another resolution that embodies that amendment at some point.
I'm not saying don't go ahead with it, but I think this has to hit the ground running.
Deputy Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, I think we can deal with this in the last paragraph of the existing motion and just where it talks about the BRNE study, and we can just add or other potential programs or opportunities, just right in there.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Excuse me, thank you through the mayor. If I can just remind council when you are talking around these motions and talking around amendments and the actions that you're going to request staff to take, is to please remember the capacity of the staff and what you're asking of them. Because it's great to put the motions forward, but if we don't have capacity to meet those motions, we're just going to set ourselves up for failure. And I think we just need to make sure that the capacity is there to meet what the expectation is. So we just ask that you take that into consideration when you're thinking about that.
Deputy
Thank
Mayor?
you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, to Sarah's point, absolutely taken. All I have to go on is that the last time we received a BRNE grant, that funding was enough to hire a specific individual to undertake that project. So I'm just hopeful that this grant is structured in the same way, that it allows for allows an adequate amount of the funding for a staffing position.
Councillor Yuri?
And just some very quick cursory research. It's really kind of ironic, Steve, that you asked that question. Because, quote, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund does not have an application date because it's a formula-based program that provides funding to municipalities annually. There is not specifically an application date tied to it.
Yeah. So how do you want to proceed here, Councillor Greenfield?
Your worship, I think we should keep moving ahead with this. Like, I really doubt it, but who knows, after Friday, this could all change. So let's get on, I think we should get on it.
So what's your recommendation with respect to the amendment? You would drop it? Okay, that's what
The amendment was never seconded
okay,
either, so.
so it has died. Okay, are we ready to vote on this? All in favor? Perfect, thank you. The next item, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so I'll move this motion and read it. I'm sorry it is lengthy, but I think it's important for anyone listening to hear what we're going to be speaking about. Recommendation, whereas in 2019, TC Energy made public its plan to construct and operate a major 1,000 megawatt hydroelectric generating facility centered on zero emission electricity generation technology known as pumped storage. Related works and undertakings on lands within the municipality of Meaford, and whereas in 2020, the council of the municipality received and reviewed report CAO 2020-03 and unanimously declared conditional support for the proposed facility, proceeding to the applicable approval processes led by environmental assessments and impact assessments, including impact assessment under the Federal Impact Assessment Act. And whereas in 2021, the Department of National Defense determined that the proposed facility could be located on a portion of land within the 4th Canadian Division Training Center in Meaford, subject to conditions. And whereas in 2022, the Council of the Municipality discussed the offer by TC Energy to provide community benefits to the municipality in relation to the proposed facility, including council review of report CAO 2022-33 that included a draft framework for a community benefits agreement. And whereas in 2022, the council of the municipality completed the 10-year review of its official plan and related community engagement, resulting in adoption of Amendment 34 to its official plan to guide physical change and development across the municipality for the next 25 years, continuing the municipality's environment first planning policy and prioritizing infrastructure that addresses sustainability and climate adaptation. And whereas in 2023, TC Energy advised the municipality that it will reimburse the municipality for the costs of technical peer reviewers of all potential impacts of the proposed facility, legal counsel on all relevant matters, and costs related to the development of a community benefits agreement between the municipality and TC Energy, including a council-approved negotiator. And whereas the municipality seeks to ensure that it has a proper framework of general application to apply for major proposals that in whole or in part are not subject to Ontario's land use planning and approval processes. And whereas the municipality seeks to ensure that this new framework for major proposals will provide it with authority to identify, study, consult with its residents, and assess community impacts and benefits, and develop possible agreement and/or conditions related to possible council support. Therefore, be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby directs staff to develop a bylaw of general application to major proposals in order to engage its residents, properly study the proposal's community impacts and benefits, and address these impacts and benefits by agreement, conditions of support, or their combination.
Do we need a seconder for this motion? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Urick? Discussion, questions? Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Deputy Mayor, for bringing this forward. As I'm reading through it, the first, I guess, 5 or 6 paragraphs refer to or are somewhat built around the TC proposal. It's mentioned a number of times. So, and then when we get down to the last 3 paragraphs, we talk about major proposals, no names from those proponents. So are we using here the TC proposal and promises thus far as somewhat of a guideline for future proposals? Is that the intention, or is that not necessarily indicating that in the future our municipality will be looking for something similar to what TC has talked to us about? I hope I'm asking that
Mr.
reasonably
Mayor,
well.
if I may, and I think I understand your question, Councillor Greenfield. So this would be a policy, as is suggested, of a general nature that would apply to major proposals. But yes, I mean, the major proposal we had before us is the TC Energy Ontario Pump Storage Project. So much of what we're talking about here would pertain to that project. And I really see all of this in more simple terms as requesting staff to create a bylaw that outlines the process to go forward from where we are right now. So to go from sort of here to the next stages and phases of this project, which in large part has to do with the initiation of the community benefit agreement, because I think we're all anxious to start those conversations, and we want those to be very, very inclusive of our public, of our residents and our businesses. And so we want to outline the process as for how that's going to be undertaken. We want that to be a fulsome process, and we want to utilize all of that information in such a way that will be the backbone for the community agreement. And this, what we're asking for today is just a bylaw that will outline that process and allow us to go forward and to get that underway, and so that we all have an understanding of what it's going to look like.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Madam Deputy Mayor, I have always looked at my fellow councillors in the eye. When I have something to say, it's straight up and I need to engage with you. But there are certain words which are written in this that you excuse me if I do not continue to look at yourself. I believe that this is one of the most serious things that has ever come before this council. Not that previously from what Mr. Urick brought before this council has not been serious. This one is very serious because of the wording which is used inside this. So I have a few questions, Madam Deputy Mayor. Where did this come from? And I ask that very seriously because every one of us on this sitting council are engaged with the ongoing proposal for the TC Energy pump storage, what they're wanting to do. And there's wording in here, and particularly if we have got time this afternoon to go through particularly your last 3 paragraphs. You start off, Madam Deputy Mayor, and you give us a good history of where things have come from. It's a historical background right up until the point where you start talking about. No, please answer my first one. Where was this? Where did this come from? So you bring this forward.
Yep, and thank you, Councillor Bell, for the question. So what I can respond to comes back to two conversations that we've all had with representatives from TC Energy, with an understanding that a community benefit agreement is the next stage of discussion now that approval has been given by the province and funding has been allotted by the province to go forward with impact assessments. So that being said, yes, it was felt there was a need to have this bylaw in place to begin those conversations. Did I write the bylaw? No, I did not. The bylaw was written for us in the same way that the bylaw that I brought forward in 2023 on February the 27th. There was assistance, legal assistance provided, as there has been with this one, because you're right, this is serious, this is critically important, and we need to be sure that everything said is absolutely correct. So yes, there has been legal assistance with the creation of this motion.
May I just continue? Mr.
Sure,
Mayor?
yes, go right ahead.
Thank you for that, Madam Deputy Mayor. And so for clarity on that, for people who are watching this, that comes from that group of people who are assembled, yourself, the mayor, and there are others, and you just said legal counsel to bring this forward. So that's where that came from, that working group. Okay. So the first thing that I think I would really insist on as we're going through this is in your very first opening remarks here, where it says that these are lands within the municipality of Meaford. I would like to amend that by saying these are on federal lands. This entire discussion from the very first moment any member of council's past, it has been a discussion. There have been people who have liked it that it's on federal property, and there are people who hate it that it's on federal property. And for this to be opening up by simply saying that these are lands within the municipality of Meaford, the only thing I can think of is that, yes, the Department of National Defense grants the municipality of Meaford money, and yes, the municipality of Meaford forwards money on to Grey County. One could say that this is a proposal inside Grey County, but particularly with TC Energy's proposal. This proposal is on federal property, and I would like to have that amended and put clearly up front at the beginning of your proposal.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, and I appreciate you brought that forward, Councillor Bell, because I actually had the same question. And I asked the question of legal counsel and of several of our staff members who all assured me that they were very comfortable with it stating the project was within the municipality. So I'm going to ask others to speak on that if they would. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I wonder if our manager of planning or if our interim CAO would be comfortable adding their thoughts on that particular phrase within the municipality of Meaford.
Through you, Mayor Kentner, they are lands within the municipality of Meaford. Yes, they are federal lands, and we do get a payment in lieu from them, but they are still lands within the municipality of Meaford. That like lands, federal lands, they're still located in our municipality. I think is my understanding of that.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, that's how it was. That's how it has been discussed. Yes.
I see my fellow Councillor, you're probably wishing to pick up on that, so I'm interested in hearing.
I'll come back to you and make sure you get all your points out. Councillor Yurg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Tony, I had exactly the same thought. So I contacted the lawyer directly and I asked exactly the same question and received pretty much the same answer. The recommendation legally is that that land resides within the boundaries of the municipality of Meaford. So it is not an inaccurate statement the way that read. I also thought that it should denote federal, but legally he assured me that this was appropriate.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So seemingly I'm beaten on that one. Not happy that the word federal is not included on that. But if that's going to carry on through this afternoon, Okay, what that does is it carries on through then to the last 3 paragraphs of what is written here. Because it starts out, like my fellow councillor Greenfield said, it starts out very singular, very pointed and very definitive that we're talking specifically about the TC Energy proposal. And yet the language changes within the last 3 paragraphs where it says matters, the third last, or is it the 4th last paragraph, that the proposed facility on relevant matters, costs related to the development of community benefits agreement, including council approved negotiator. That's a historical, we've been doing that. That's been ongoing. I will say that on that particular paragraph, I believe that there has been a gap. There has been a gap in communications between TC Energy and what they conclude for community benefits. And I'm also going to say at this time, we have been doing as much as we can as a sitting council by allowing to have at our good pleasure and our good will, the Pump Storage Advisory Committee. And I've been looking forward for something coming from that committee to do one single thing that says what a community benefit could possibly be, even one. So we have said at our good pleasure, we will construct this advisory committee, and yet nothing is coming out of that. So we are doing exactly what this paragraph says. But the most important thing that I believe this is saying is asking this municipality to punch way above its weight. And that's the next paragraph on proposals with an S that in whole or part are not subject to Ontario land use planning. Are we trying to be a municipality that's going to put planning restrictions and a bylaw inside the wire on the 4th Canadian Division Training Center on federal lands that we have nothing to say about? And I can give you 20, 30 examples of what goes on up there at the Military Training Center, and not once does any council member or planning or building department get told what they are going to do, because it's federal property and they just do what they are going to do because they can. And this line tells me that we're trying to develop something that makes us punch above our weight. And I really need an explanation as to why we think at this particular time we need to try and do something like that, because I just don't see that we have the mandate from the province of Ontario to do so. Thank you.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor, and I have a response to it if you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 2 things. First of all, PSAC, our Pump Storage Advisory Committee, has not met for several months. We have not, we will be meeting in March. So this particular motion has not come from PSAC. I just want to clarify that. And my second point, appreciating your comments, Councillor Bell, as I'm going to look to Alex to suggest that this motion be deferred until we have legal counsel explain the points that you have brought forward so that there is a clearer understanding of everything that's being presented here in the language of this motion. Can we do that, Alex?
Dear Mr. Mayor, yes, absolutely. We can do a motion to defer and we can bring this back next council meeting to discuss again.
We will be having a closed session at the conclusion of this meeting, and you can get your question. You can go to the horse's mouth. I believe that I'd just like to add, the federal government is not paying for our legal counsel. We're paying for our legal counsel, and I'm sure our legal counsel is working on our behalf.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'm kind of on a little bit of a roll here. I'm not just trying to keep myself level and good on this thing. Now that people have heard myself speak, and now that we know that we're going to be getting some legal counsel in a closed session, that would actually make somebody, all of us on council, maybe that we have to become silent. Would that be a fair assessment on a councillor such as myself? Once you go into a closed session, once we get that information and this comes back and all of a sudden, in particular, Councillor Bell is not quiet. We're trying to be open and we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to engage with the people. We're trying to do all of the good things that a council should do. I'm just afraid that if we can't answer this question, and I'm all for getting legal counsel. I absolutely am, because I said in my opening remarks how serious this thing is. I just don't want to have it that I have to go silent in the future.
So, Mr. Mayor, then in response to Councillor Bell, and again, I will look to Alex, can we invite legal counsel into this open session to discuss this motion, or does the deferment need to happen for legal counsel advice to occur?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, we can receive legal advice in open session. I would recommend that we defer and receive our legal advice in closed session. To your point, Councillor Bell, yes, we hear you, and we also want to be transparent. We also want to be open. This motion is being brought forward in open session. The municipality and council are able to receive legal advice in closed session. And some things do need to stay in closed. But whatever we can bring into open, we always will. We can't pass bylaws in closed. Council can't pass motions in closed, right? But when it comes to sensitive matters, this council does need to hear legal advice in closed session. But I think for our purposes, if council would feel more comfortable deferring, I think that works well considering we have our closed session coming up next. So that's an option, just so there's a better understanding for you when it comes to actually voting on this motion. It's not about staying silent, it's just a better understanding, so you know how to vote. That's what I would say.
Well, Mr. Mayor, at this time, I would move that we defer this.
Is that the motion that we have? We need a seconder for that motion now. Yes, is there a seconder? Pardon? Oh, I thought he was, okay, fine. It was you moved it, okay. Very good. All in favor? Okay. Thank you. That straightens that out. We will come back to this. Next on the agenda is the adoption of minutes. Be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby adopt the minutes of the council meetings held on February 3, 4, 6, and February 10, 2025. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Forder and Councillor Uhrig. Were there any errors or omissions or anything you wanted to raise? Otherwise, all in favor of accepting them? That's carried. And is there anything on the communications agenda that anyone would like to raise? Deputy Mayor?
No, I'm going to pull from the correspondence list, so I don't know whether that.
But no, there's nothing, I don't think, about people seeing the, oh, I'm sorry, we need to do the Grey County minutes next then, and then I'll come back to that.
Just communication.
Okay, yes. Then on to the correspondence list.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull number 15, and that is the letter, the information from Liz Buckton regarding our affordable housing crises in Grey. And we had a wonderful presentation from Liz and Marilyn Struthers at our last meeting. And I just don't want this information to get lost anywhere. It's a tremendous amount of data, and I think it's really crucial and important to the municipality. So I'm just wondering if we can somehow have this pulled and placed somewhere where we can access it, so it doesn't just disappear in this communication list and never resurface. So I just would like it held in a parking lot somewhere so that we can return to it for reference and analysis whenever we might choose to.
Do you have a suggestion for how to accomplish that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, usually what I do is I record in the minutes what Deputy Mayor Keaveney has just alluded to. I think we'll have to chat internally with regards to what we can do with that correspondence and sort of the next steps with regards to affordable housing. We'll have to touch base with our management team and see where we're at with that particular item. But I can record it in the minutes for sure.
Okay. I'm going to move on then to a closed session. The recommendation is be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford does now go into a closed session at 2:58 p.m. to discuss A, The receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, specifically relating to the ongoing process for the TC Energy Pump Storage Project with the interim CAO, Treasurer, Director of Financial Services, the Director of Community Services and HR Manager, the Manager of Planning Services, and the Municipal Solicitor, along with the Acting Clerk in attendance. B, personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, specifically candidates for appointment to advisory committees with the interim CAO / treasurer / director of financial services, director of community services and HR, and acting clerk in attendance. And C, personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, specifically related to the recruitment of a CAO, with the interim CAO, treasurer, director of financial services, the director of community services and HR, and the acting clerk in attendance. Mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Keaveney has moved it, and Councillor Forder has seconded. So at the conclusion of that session, I will be reporting out on our deliberations. Okay, reporting out from our closed session this afternoon, we met in closed session to discuss matters relating to the ongoing process for the TC Energy Pump Storage Project, candidates for appointment to advisory committees, and CAO recruitment. And direction was given to staff regarding advisory committee recruitment and CAO recruitment. We have another item of business, confirming bylaw. The recommendation is, be it resolved that bylaw 2025-09, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Meaford at its regular and special meetings held in the months of January and February 2025, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. I need a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Greenfield and Deputy Mayor Keaveney, all in favor? And that is carried. And with that, I'm going to adjourn this lengthy meeting this afternoon.